The Bermuda Triangle is a specific section of the North Atlantic Ocean that has claimed thousands of lives in unusual circumstances. Hundreds of boats and planes have been lost in this area, never to be seen again. From a family lost in a private plane to giant pyramids under the ocean, here are 15 things you need to know about the Bermuda Triangle. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos every day. That being said, let's begin. Number 15. A new island formed in the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is known for how many things it has lost, but what about the things it has found? In 2017, a new island began forming in the Bermuda Triangle off Cape Point in North Carolina. It was around a mile long and was aptly named Shelly Island due to the volume of discarded shells it contained. While any new island is worthy of exploration, locals are being warned to stay away from this one. And it's not because they might find themselves as another Bermuda Triangle statistic. Instead, the gap between the island or sandbank and the mainland produces strong currents. These may pose a risk for anyone trying to get to the island. There may also be years worth of old, rusty fishing hooks on the sands, not to mention sharks and stingrays lurking beneath the surface. It's unknown whether the new sandy mile-long island will form part of Cape Point or whether it'll disappear as quickly as it appeared. Number 14. The Bermuda Triangle moves. There's always a fear in the back of people's minds when out on the ocean that they will end up in the Bermuda Triangle, lost forever. But it's okay, you see, for the Bermuda Triangle is outlined on a map, and as long as you stay outside of those lines, you're safe, right? Wrong. The Bermuda Triangle moves. No one can say with any certainty where the precise borders of the triangle are, and that's because they change all the time. Even the weather and time of year can make a difference, and any maps are merely a guide. It's best to view the triangle as a floating marker, as it can float over 3 points in a general area. If you relied on a map for peace of mind, then the safest bet is to stay home. Who needs the outdoors anyway, right? Number 13. Christopher Columbus documented odd happenings. Given how many aircraft and ships have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle, you would think that people would steer well clear. Instead, it remains one of the most popular shipping lanes, with boats crossing it to access ports in Europe, the Americas, and the Caribbean islands. Throughout the years, many boat captains have reported strange happenings on their journeys, but you might be surprised to learn that this is not a new issue. Even Christopher Columbus, who made a transatlantic voyage, was confused about what he faced during his first trip in 1492. His findings were outlined in the Amazon Prime documentary called Inside the Bermuda Triangle. Christopher reported seeing a small light, almost like a wax candle, that lifted for a few seconds as if to indicate land. His captain's log outlined the first of many abnormalities within the Bermuda Triangle in the years to follow. He also noted that his compass pointed in the wrong direction, incorrect by around 11¼ degrees on at least 3 occasions. He also detailed how the sea would rise at random without wind. Historian Larry Kusch was quick to point out that weather conditions could explain many of these abnormalities, but others aren't so sure. Number 12. The mystery of Flight 19. If you've heard of the Bermuda Triangle, then you will have undoubtedly heard of Flight 19. After all, this famed flight is what led to the coining of the phrase for the triangle in the first place. Flight 19 is the collective name for 5 U.S. Navy bombers that took off on a training exercise in 1945 and never came home. 2 or 3 experienced military personnel were in each of the 5 planes, and they were to head over the Hens and Chicken Shoals region at 2 p.m., drop off a simulated payload, then head north over the Grand Bahamas island. They would then fly northwest to get back to their Florida base. The route formed a simple triangle. Everything went according to plan in the first leg of the exercise, but then things started to go a bit awry. Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, who led the exercise and was a Pacific Theater of World War II veteran, radioed in to let the base know his compasses were out. He had been trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and believed he was in the Keys, but didn't know how far down. His compass problems were in the same area of the ocean as those of Christopher Columbus all those years before. Navy personnel were confused as to how they had flown hundreds of miles off course in as little as an hour, and they set about trying to find them. In the meantime, Lieutenant Taylor spent several hours leading the planes in different directions to find Florida, and fuel was running low. Nothing but static was picked up from that point forward, and the planes were never seen again. 2 flying boats were sent out to track them down, but one went off the radar and it too was never seen again. Over 300 Navy boats spent 5 days searching for the missing planes without success. This loss of life helped coin the term Bermuda Triangle. Vincent Gaddis wrote an article about the flight and penned the area. He drew a line from Florida to Bermuda, Bermuda to Puerto Rico, and another through the Bahamas back to Florida. The triangle formed an area in which 1,000 people lost their lives in a short 20-year period. Number 11. Family goes missing. An entire family went missing in the Bermuda Triangle in 2017, and while remains of their plane were found, their bodies never were. Event management company SEO Jennifer Blumen, her 3- and 4-year-old children, and her boyfriend and pilot Nathan Ulrich were traveling in Jennifer's private aircraft to Puerto Rico for Mother's Day. On the way home to New York the next day, the flight took off from an airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The family would then make a fuel stop in South Florida before making the final leg home. However, when the plane was just 37 miles from the Bahamas, Miami Air Traffic Control lost sight of it. In clear weather, it vanished from the radar flying at 24,000 feet and 345 miles per hour. U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Air Force, and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force took part in a search operation to locate the plane. After 30 hours, they found floating debris 15 miles east of Eleuthera, the Bahamas. The family was never found. As weather conditions were perfect for flight, officials can only speculate that the plane encountered mechanical problems. However, the family's flight path was over the Bermuda Triangle, which means there are 4 more casualties to add to the list. Number 10. The Mystery of the Ellen Austin. You might think it's easy for a small boat or plane to be lost in the Bermuda Triangle, but certainly not a large one. After all, they are often least likely to come to harm in troubled waters or succumb to freak waves. As it turns out, big ships do go missing too. Take Ellen Austin, for example. Ellen Austin was a 210-foot-long, 1,800-ton American schooner. It was manufactured in Maine in 1854 and traveled a regular London to New York route. In 1881, Ellen Austin came across another boat in the Atlantic Ocean that was moving at a decent speed but didn't appear to have anyone on board. Crew from the Ellen Austin boarded the boat and confirmed there were no pirates or anyone else around. Strangely, the captain's log and boat nameplate were missing, but everything from personal possessions to food rations and expensive cargo were still there. The crew decided to guide the boat alongside the Ellen Austin back to New York, but the 2 boats were separated in a storm. The unnamed ship disappeared along with the crew. Eventually, it was found drifting, but once again with no one on board, not even the Ellen Austin crew. The second logbook was also missing, leading people to believe the boat was possibly cursed. Given the value of the cargo, the Ellen Austin captain was determined to take the boat and managed to coax crew aboard with the promise of weapons and reassurance that it couldn't possibly go missing for a second time. According to records, although unconfirmed, it did go missing a second time, and it was never found. Number 9. USS Cyclops disappears. You never hear of people losing their sofa in their house or their fridge. They're simply too large to lose. So no one thought the largest ship in the US Navy fleet would ever be lost. Until it was. The USS Cyclops was a 550-foot collier that sailed between Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Baltic Sea. Initially, it was used for moving coal and refugees, but World War I saw it become integral in the transportation of troops. In 1918, it disappeared. The USS Cyclops was on a voyage from West Indies to Baltimore with 306 crew and 11,000 tons of manganese ore for the production of steel. It left Brazil, restocked in Barbados, and made the trip home to Baltimore. Except it never made it back. The last message that came from the captain was weather fair, all well. There was no emergency call, the ship simply vanished. And where did it disappear? You guessed it, in the Bermuda Triangle. There had been murmurs about Captain George W. Worley being a drunk and incapable of steering a ship. Some people have even said there had been a minor mutiny, but these charges were defended successfully. Some say the Germans may have taken the boat or that a storm had ravaged it. No evidence of either had been found. Over a century later, USS Cyclops remains lost. Number 8. Alien shipwreck under the sea? There are potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of shipwrecks in the ocean, and plenty in the Bermuda Triangle as well. But according to one treasure hunter, none are like this one around 300 feet below the ocean's surface. Daryl Miklos, an explorer and treasure hunter from the Discovery Channel docu-series Cooper's Treasures, has been exploring the ocean with secret maps created by a close friend of his, Gordon Cooper. Gordon Cooper was an astronaut for NASA and piloted a spacecraft, Mercury Atlas 9 Faith 7, around the Earth 22 times. He also paved the way for men to reach the moon, was the first to sleep in space, the first to fly twice, and the first American to be televised from space. While in orbit, Gordon was tasked with the secret mission of looking for nuclear threats, such as Russian submarines and nuclear missile sites. While doing this, he created a map with what he noted as being shipwrecks in the Caribbean. He gave this map with the coordinates to Daryl Miklos before his death in 2004. On the map, Gordon had marked an unidentified anomaly in the sea, which could be proof of alien life on Earth hundreds of years ago. Previously documented coordinates had led Daryl to shipwrecks worth millions of dollars, so Gordon meant business. The strange structure had 15 300-foot pieces jutting out from the side and materials unlike anything he had seen on other shipwrecks before. He didn't believe it was naturally made or human-made, which meant it could be from another planet. Daryl Miklos hopes to bring the alien spaceship to the surface for further investigation, which could see a third season of Cooper's Treasures on the Discovery Channel. Number 7. Crystal pyramids found in Bermuda Triangle. For years, people have marveled over how a triangle-shaped part of the ocean manages to swallow up so many ships and their crew, never to be seen again. Now there might be a reason for these disturbing disappearances. Giant pyramids. Come again? You heard. Giant pyramids. Using sonar imaging, Dr. Meyer Verlag discovered pyramids around 1.25 miles under the ocean's surface. They tower over the Great Pyramid of Giza at 3 times its size. How they got under there is anyone's guess, but it's thought that they were built on land before being claimed by the seas. Earthquakes may have also played a part. Their purpose is unknown, but their impact could be significant. Some say they are evidence of the lost city of Atlantis, but others speculate that they could be to blame for missing planes and ships. How? As ocean water swirls around them, vortexes are created, which can discharge energy and suck anything into the water's depths. That could explain why there's often no sign of wreckage after a boat or plane goes missing in the Bermuda Triangle. Number 6. The ghost ship Carol A. Deering. Was it mutiny? Pirates? The Bermuda Triangle? Even after extensive investigations, we are still none the wiser about what happened to Carol A. Deering and its crew. The 255-foot by 45-foot ship with 5 masts and 3 decks was found in winter, grounded and abandoned in North Carolina in 1921. Some say it was abandoned, while others believe it was yet another Bermuda Triangle victim. The Carroll A. Deering schooner set sail in 1920 with a 10-man Danish crew and a step-in captain, W.B. Wormel, who had replaced an ill captain. Captain Wormel was a retired seaman and had years of experience. They were on their way to Rio de Janeiro with a shipment of coal, and the crew was granted leave while it was being unloaded. At this time, Captain Wormel told his friend, Captain Goodwin, from a cargo ship, that aside from his engineer, he didn't have much confidence in his crew. Threats were later made against the captain's life by the crew, and it didn't seem like it was all rainbows and unicorns aboard the luxury cargo ship. The ship was seen in North Carolina in 1921 by the Cape Lookout lightship, where the lightship's keeper reported being told by someone aboard the boat that it had lost its anchors. It was later found grounded in Diamond Shoals near Cape Hatteras with crew possessions, lifeboats, and the ship's log and navigation equipment missing. However, food was in a frying pan and there was coffee on the stove. The ship was dynamited to avoid the risk of traffic interference, but the crew was never found. Subsequent investigations determined that the boat was purposefully run aground and the crew had either mutinied or abandoned the ship. Pirates could also have been the cause. Number 5. The Witchcraft Yacht. It makes complete sense to assume that anyone who gets lost at sea in the Bermuda Triangle is miles from land, civilization, and help. But as it turns out, the ominous triangle can even claim those who don't wander all too far from the safety of land. Witchcraft, a 23-foot-long luxury cabin cruiser, is proof of that. A hotel owner, Barack, invited his friend Father Patrick Horgan onto his boat on December 22, 1967 to check out the Christmas lights along the Miami shoreline. They would be traveling about a mile from the shore, turn off the engines, and enjoy the lights. The men left the Miami Yacht Marina as planned. At 9 p.m., however, Barack contacted the Coast Guards to say they had hit something and would need a tow. At that point, they weren't even a mile offshore. It wasn't an SOS call, and there was nothing to indicate an emergency. Barack told the Coast Guard crew that he would let off a flare to let them know his position, and they were expecting some rudder and propeller damage but an intact hull. Within 20 minutes, Coast Guards were in the area they were sure the men would be, but found neither the men nor the boat. They covered a 1,200-mile area and found nothing. Barack was a cautious and experienced yachtsman. He carried floating cushions and life jackets on his boat and even had a flotation device to make the boat unsinkable. Therefore, if the hull were damaged, the boat still wouldn't sink. Private boats were alerted to be on the lookout for any debris, but no one saw a thing. Nearly 25,000 miles were covered in the search for the boat, but it ended on December 28th. The Coast Guards determined that the men were presumed missing, but not lost at sea. Number 4. The disappearance of the Sulphur Queen. In 1944, the 524-foot SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a T-2 tanker, was built during World War II for the transportation of oil. By 1960, it had been converted into a molten sulfur carrier with the installation of high-temperature tanks for the safe transport of molten sulfur. The boat set off from Beaumont, Texas to Norfolk in early 1963 with over 15,000 tons of sulfur and 39 crew. A routine message was received on February 4th, but nothing was heard from the boat after that. A 19-day search mission was launched in the South Florida Straits, but only a small amount of debris was found. At the time of the boat's disappearance, the seas were rough, with waves up to 16 feet high. However, given the size of the Sulphur Queen, such conditions shouldn't be a problem. But were they? Fire was common around the sulfur tanks, and the crew was so used to it that they never bothered to contain it. Sometimes they would arrive and leave ports with the tanks still burning. The boat also had heavy corrosion with a weak mid-portion that could have put it at risk of damage at sea. To support that idea, a crewman had been overheard telling his wife that the ship was a floating garbage can. Coast Guards and the Navy Board determined that the ship was lost at sea near the Straits of Florida. Number 3. Methane pockets may be behind mystery. Alien abductions, portals to other worlds, and giant sea monsters are a few of the many common possible explanations in and around the Bermuda Triangle. But the real reason might be a little more boring: pockets of methane gas. Scientists studying the Barents Sea, which lies north of Norway, said they found craters around 150 feet deep and half a mile wide in the sea. They believe these craters are the result of methane ice turning into gas too quickly, resulting in methane explosions. With each explosion, water can shoot up at random, quickly enveloping anything in its path. Developing at random, they could explain the disappearance of many planes and ships in the area, which have been recorded since the early 1900s. Number 2. Electric fog. For anyone who lives to tell the tale of strange happenings in the Bermuda Triangle, one common strand often comes up in their retelling of the events. Fog appears, navigational equipment goes haywire, and sometimes time even seems to speed up. Electric fog is given as a possible explanation. The electric fog appears like a gray cloud of electromagnetic fields that forms in the ocean. It can easily enshroud a boat or a plane. It then moves with the ship or plane, causes navigational equipment to play up, and distorts time. In many cases, airplanes and boats then disappear without a trace. Those who have lived to tell the tale explain it for themselves. Veteran pilot and author Bruce Gernon said he flew a Bonanza plane with his father in 1970 and recalls an elliptical cloud forming ahead of them 3 miles from Andros Island. It created a tunnel with rotating and spiraling lines which propelled them forward. Their navigational equipment collapsed and they felt like they were in zero gravity. The fog dissipated over Miami Beach, which forms a corner of the triangle, and they once again appeared on the radar. At the end of it, however, their journey appears to have taken half an hour less than usual after traveling through the tunnel for 100 miles. Number 1. Compasses go haywire. Most experienced or savvy pilots and boat captains say they can't rely on their navigational equipment when flying or sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. At any one time, each component can be reading something entirely different. But why? Dr. Philippe Ruha from Bermuda's Custodian of Historic Wrecks explained his theory on Mysteries of the Missing, a TV series on Science Channel. The Bermuda Triangle was the subject of the 7th episode. Dr. Ruha said the area's past volcanic activity could play a part, and geologist Dr. Robbie Smith agreed. He noted that volcanic remnants were detected around 200 miles from Bermuda with high iron content. Iron has magnetic properties that could influence compasses. Nick Hutchings, a minerals prospector, added that the 500-foot-thick materials also contained up to 20% magnetite, which is the most magnetic naturally occurring substance. With around 500 billion tons of it around Bermuda, it's not out of the question for those forces to affect compasses and other navigational equipment. The Bermuda Triangle is a little bit spookier than we thought. Do you have any explanations for these baffling things that have been found and lost? Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time!